KROW, who is a great Overwatch 2 YouTuber. I strongly recommend you subscribe to him if you haven't. Just released a team composition guide for all of the heroes in the game. Here is that table of all the heroes and which compositions suit them best. A green check mark means it's their default style. Red X means do not play them with this composition. Orange triangle means playable but not particularly synergistic. Red triangle means counter, as in this hero counters an opposing team using this style. KROW didn't explain how he plays the heroes, so I'm making this addendum to his guide with my thoughts on his placements. A quick explanation on the compositions. So this is in my own words, by the way. Poke lineups have strong long-range damage and generally want fights to last longer for them to get picks. They don't like enemies who can close the distance on them quickly, especially lineups with vertical mobility. Generally speaking, Poke counters Rush but loses to Dive. Rush, also known as Brawl, lineups are durable, close-range fighters who want to steamroll your front line and beat you head-on. They struggle to cross large open areas and deal with mobile heroes. Generally speaking, Rush counters Dive but loses to Poke. Dive lineups are very mobile and can engage when and where they so choose. They're more fragile than other comps and tend to need to create a strong advantage off the initial dive to win fights. Generally speaking, Dive counters Poke but loses to Rush. Alright, let's start with the supports. So first of all, we have Brigitte. So for Brigitte, Brigitte really does not work well with Poke lineups. Obviously, a lot of her abilities require her to be close ranged, which means in the default neutral position where teams are poking at each other, like the neutral phase, she really can't do anything. She can still be used to shut down opposing divers, so in that sense she's like kind of helpful, but the problem is the rest of your team is running Poke and their team runs Dive. You're not going to be able to do enough as Brig to stop them from running over your team. Regarding Rush, this is kind of interesting. So with Brig, Rush is valuable in the sense that she can follow along with her team and she can kind of be there in the front line, but the problem is Brig's not durable enough to actually front line, so the days of her like running in with your Ryan, like trading swings on their Ryan are long over. So she can follow them and she can trigger whip shot or inspire off of whip shot and so forth, but she's not giving you a ton of value in that sense. And the last one is Dive, which is really interesting. So for Dive, why is Brig so good in Dive? Well, number one, it might seem kind of weird because Dive requires your team to rapidly engage on the enemy team. Brig has no way to rapidly engage. Shield Bash doesn't actually move her that far. So she's actually used to protect, generally speaking, your other support. So most supports are not going to follow the dive in. They're going to play at long range. So for example, Ana, like you can see Ana for down is synergized as well Dive. So your supports are going to be hammering damage or giving healing to your diving heroes. Brig is excellent because she can bodyguard your other support, right? Whether that be an Ana or a Lifeweaver or a BAP, whomever, or a Zenyatta. As a Brig, you can hang back and you can still toss packs out, because those are very, very long range and they're perfectly accurate. You can toss packs out to your diving heroes while still protecting your other support. Next up, we have Lucio. Lucio is the classic rush support. I think a lot of Ryans would refuse to play at all if they don't have a Lucio at higher ranks. So for Lucio, right, it's going left to right again. For poke lineups, Lucio gives you virtually nothing. Again, his poke damage is very low and it's very inaccurate at long range. So can't really do a lot there. And you can heal, but that's like not great value, right? Lucio being, second worst healer in the game, give or take. So just not particularly effective. He's also a relatively large target. And if you're not like jumping around over somebody's head, actually fairly easy to hit. Rush, amazing. Lucio synergizes with your whole team, makes your entire team run very, very quickly. That's like kind of the essence of Rush, being able to close the gap with the enemy team very, very fast. So generally a team that could kite you, they can't kite you if there's Lucio that's able to bring you along and help you engage in. And also, once your Rush team has reached them, Lucio can be quite aggressive because the threat is split multiple different ways, versus like a solo diving Lucio is just going to get killed right away. But it's Lucio with the Rhine, with the Cassidy, with the Reaper, no one's looking at the Lucio and you can get good damage in. Dive's interesting. So Lucio has the mobility to follow dive, but he can't go quite as fast as them, and often he's limited in terms of like the routes he can take, versus dive heroes like D.Va, Genji, Tracer, etc. often have much more flexibility in terms of like where they can dive to. Like they can, Nambati first point is a good example, right? They can just immediately go to high ground. Lucio needs to wall climb and then do a jump and then another wall climb, and then he's finally there. So Lucio's okay here. Once he gets there, he's very good and very, very effective, but the problem is like that engagement timing is not necessarily well synced the rest of his team. Next up, we have Mercy. So Mercy is a classic poke support, and the reason being is she wants a damage boost a DPS. She doesn't want damage boost a tank. She doesn't want damage boost support. She wants damage boost a DPS. And the longer the fight goes on, the more damage boosted that she does, and that damage every single time that DPS shoots, it's potential for a pick. And as soon as you get a pick, you're going to win the fight. So Mercy wants fights to last a long time. She doesn't want people to be in her face or on her pocketing support. She doesn't want to have to heal people. Poke damage tends to be very low damage compared to people at close range. So there's not as much healing that she needs to do compared to damage boosting a Widow or Hanzo or whomever, and then having them just kind of go to town. Mercy's not good in rush lineups. Rush lineups will want to engage close range, like in your face, you punch in the face kind of stuff. Mercy's not good at healing. Her damage boosting is not enough to overwhelm the large amount of damage and healing going on from other heroes at close range, so she doesn't want fights to go very quickly, so rush is just really bad for her. Dive she's okay with. She certainly has the mobility to follow dive in, but it exposes her to more danger than when she plays in poke. So it's a situation where, it's playable. It's not great, but obviously there are some possible dive lineups where you can be running heroes like Echo, for example, where Mercy might be pocketing the Echo, and obviously it's still a really great composition. I think that saying at the top you can see that KROW listed it as playable as lacking synergy. I think that's a little extreme. I would say maybe not ideal. Lifeweaver. Lifeweaver's interesting. So KROW has Lifeweaver listed in the poke column as default playstyle. I think that's fine. I certainly don't think Lifeweaver fits. Maybe it's easier to cover the other two why he's not. So Lifeweaver's not good at rush. Rush, again, really high damage. You're looking for high damage, high healing, supports to be able to follow them in. Or speed with utility, right? So you're looking at Lucio, you're looking at Baptiste, you're looking at Moira. They're great for rush. Lifeweaver doesn't heal that much, only 55-ish health a second, so about as much as Mercy, so just not a good healer. And he doesn't have anything to really stop the enemy team from running over your team. And if you're playing at close range, then your life grip does not add nearly as much value, right? Moving somebody 5 meters back is not so great. Moving somebody 25 meters back is great value. So not good against rush, or not good with rush lineups. Dive, Lifeweaver is actually okay, right? I think the Lifeweaver is perfectly fine here, and this is where I wish that KROW maybe had slashes, because I think this you could say green check mark / red triangle here, because KROW has good long range healings. He doesn't really add any other utility, pedal platforms, pretty much useless, but he can life grip dive heroes back, which allows them to be quite aggressive. So I don't know that I would say it's default, but I would say orange triangle here probably for Lifeweaver if you didn't have red triangle. So why is Lifeweaver a counter to dive? That's interesting. So dive targets tend to pick one enemy, right, who's kind of out of position, and they'll all jump on them and swarm them. Lifeweaver has the ability to grip, which pulls them away from you. The thing is, why does that not work against Rush? Is because Rush, their whole team is in your face. Even if you pull one teammate away, there's still so many other teammates within range that's not going to make a difference. But Dive tends to require to use 4 to 6 second movement cooldowns to go kill somebody. So then when you grip that person away, that can completely mess up their entire dive. So with poke, I don't know that I fully agree with this. Lifeweaver's long-range poke himself is pretty useless. I mean, he can just heal people. Pedal platform can definitely get people to good positions. Grip can be used to counter dive in that sense. I think that's maybe why Lifeweaver's here, similar to Break, using it to prevent your poke team from falling apart to dive. So I can sort of see this, yeah. All right, Ana. Widely considered one of the most versatile supports in the game. You can see that she's listed as default playstyle as dive, and then she's playable into poke and rush. So why is she so great in dive? Well, the thing is that Ana can throw her incredibly powerful anti-grenade at the start of fights. So when your team is diving in, you throw a nade. I mean, I love this as a Winston player. You throw a nade in, you nade their whole team. Winston dives in, your DPS dive in, and everyone just dies, and the team fights won instantly. And you do excellent damage at infinite range with no drop-off with your darts, which helps a ton. You're just very, very dangerous if you have nobody pressuring you. But if your team is diving, you typically don't receive any pressure because they're dealing with your diving heroes. You can also heal at that range. You're a great single-target healer, so they're all focusing down your Winston, for example. You can keep him alive until he can jump out. So, Ana with poke. Still good, right? Ana's got good long-range damage. Sleep Dart's still useful to protect you and your team away from diving heroes. Just good at long range. Rush. Anti-grenade's so powerful. Once your rush engages, your Reinhardt, Orisa, Ramattra reaches their front line, you grenade the enemy tank and everyone focuses and the tank just dies. So, grenade itself just synergizes with every single possible lineup in the game. Sleep is very useful at close range. You can shut somebody down, right? Interrupt an ability, prevent them from getting away. A lot of options there. Baptiste. Baptiste is interesting. So Baptiste's got two green check marks here. So one of the very few here that has double check marks. So number one, why is Baptiste good with poke lineup? Well, he obviously has a great gun, does excellent damage in the mid range. Not so much in long range, where his damage falls off a lot, but in the short to medium range, he does a lot of damage. His healing is excellent. Lamp can be used to help your snipers win duels, right? You just throw a lamp for your Widow like around a corner and have your Widow take a sniper duel, and it's literally impossible for her to lose because the lamp will keep her alive. And then when you pop Window will allow you to kill from a lot farther away than people would expect. So just good overall in poke. Baptiste is also really hard to dive. He has like something like 500 plus effective health when you include the lamp and regen burst, so he can hit both himself and his whole team up, which prevents them from diving onto your lineup easily. Rush. Baptiste, really, really good in brawly type situations because you run in there with your Reinhardt, Risa, whatever, and then you just start, you do the standard shoot, heal, weaving pattern. You do a ton of healing, you do a ton of damage up close, lots and lots of damage up close. You can be doing 150 damage per shot, per burst. Against the enemy tank, you can just completely annihilate them. Your regen burst is excellent, best healing ability in the game that's not an ultimate at keeping your whole team up. Lamp obviously gives you our team a few extra seconds to win a fight, just amazing. Dive is where Baptiste kind of falls off a lot. So dive lineups typically attack people who are much farther away. We're talking like 25 to 40 meters away. That's well within Baptiste's damage fall off distance. He does a lot less damage, right? His regen burst is useless because your team is too far away from you. You can throw Lamp out to your team, but that's like not reliable. So I think he falls off a lot. I'm surprised that KROW listed him as playable in dive. I would say Red X personally. Kiriko, interesting. So Kiriko's marked as no good for poke. Well, why is that? So Kiriko's long range damage, especially after the nerf, is not so bursty. Projectiles at long range tend to fall off a lot because you can't consistently hit people. So you're basically never going to get it picked there. You can do damage for sure and like pressure people back, but it's not great. Also, Kiriko is very diveable. Like if a Winston, D.Va, etc. jump into your team, you basically have to switch stuff out right away. And then like you can't really help your team stay alive much longer. Suzu and your healing is easily blocked, but doesn't necessarily buy your team enough to win versus like regen burst, which gives your team a ton of health. And the fact that Baptiste is so dangerous at close range means like Kiriko doesn't give your team a whole lot of value in that space against both your long range damage and also reliable long range damage, and also your ability to stop people from diving your team. Rush Kiriko is decent. Again, her single target healing is good. Suzu is very helpful. It helps cleanse things that could stop a rush otherwise, like, for example, Ana Grenade. You can also use it to save other like mass AoE effects like Grab or Shatter. You can use Suzu to save as well. And then for Dive, Kiriko naturally synergizes with Dive. She wants to be aggressive. She wants to get close to the enemy to use her good kunais, and she has incredible mobility between wall climb and a low cooldown swift step. She can basically run around and just constantly be super annoying. So a very common situation is your Winston dives in, Kiriko swift steps in with her Winston. After the Winston jumps out, she only needs to survive for about 2 seconds ish. Before her swift steps back on cooldown. So you can go in with your diving heroes, attack, ready to get some heals in on your team, keep people alive, Suzu. If you don't win the fight, you just swift step back out and you do it again. So very, very strong in dive lineups. Moira. Poke should be pretty straightforward. So she obviously doesn't do any damage at range other than throwing a damage orb, which is easily dodged. Her healing orb is not so effective. Poke lineups typically don't take a lot of damage to begin with, so her healing is not very valuable. So she offers no damage and no utility, and she can't really stop your team from getting run over. Again, people dive in, they put a bubble down or whatever it is to prevent you from like fighting back, and then Moira is completely useless and she has to fade out. Rush. So Moira's amazing with Rush. She wants her team to be clumped up into one small space because then her AoE healing that gives her massive value. Her healing orb also gives you massive value. Coalescence gives you massive value. So she wants both teams to be clumped up to get maximum healing, maximum damage, and then just be really, really effective there. And then she can look for an opportunity to fade onto a DPS or a support in the back and then kill them off with Biotic plus Grasp. Dive. So Moira's okay with dive. The idea being is that she can fades a pretty strong movement ability. She can cross large distances relatively quickly. So your DPS and tank go in, and then you fade in after them. You throw a biotic orb, and you start fighting. The thing is, you're not that bursty, which still allows people to get away. You don't give your team any other utility. You can't heal during the dive without stopping your damage, unlike someone like Baptiste or Kiriko, for example. or Zenyatta, right? Zenyatta can keep healing and damaging with through Harmony. So it's kind of an either or situation. Your damage isn't like 50 damage a second is not great. Obviously, you also have Biotic Orb, but just generally speaking, it's not an amazing situation, but it's okay. It's doable, right? Certainly, if the enemy team is not going to be able to get away from you after you fade in, can definitely be strong enough. Next up is Zenyatta. So Zenyatta is a classic poke support. He wants to fight at long range. He doesn't want people to get up in his face. Discord helps people melt. He does excellent long range damage, really, really good long range damage, and then using trance to stop your team from dying to various ultimates. His Harmony Orb helps people stay up. Again, poke damage tends to be either like so bursty it kills you instantly no matter what the healing is, like you eat a Hanzo headshot, Widow headshot, etc., or it's just like kind of getting tickled here and there where Harmony is great. Zenyatta does not want like both teams to be slamming their faces against each other with a lot of damage because he doesn't do a lot of healing. Right? Only 30 HP a second is not good. He's going to lose a sustain like war if there's going to be a lot of fighting. Rush, Zenyatta can't really keep up with the rush. He's super vulnerable, has no defensive abilities except for his being able to attack and kill people. So he does not want to follow the rush in. If he doesn't follow the rush in, he adds a lot less value in terms of being able to land hits. And then he's also extremely diveable, isolatable from his team if his team rushes away from him. So just generally not so good. Dive, Zenyatta is good because his long range damage is still good. Discord is still good to kill a dive target. The problem here is that when your team is diving, there's opportunities for the opposing team to kill you. That's not as much a problem with the poke if you're surrounded by an Ashe and a Bastion or whomever that can just help keep you alive, and you're just never going to be a primary target. All right, last one, Illari. So this one is interesting. So KROW listed Illari as rush for green, right? Default playstyle, and then playable in poke and dive. Do I agree with this? I think this one is probably the most. I don't know if I disagree. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I think this might be influenced too by KROW's watching of the Overwatch League versus like my experience playing in like GM ranked. I think that Illari works by default in poke lineup. I think she fundamentally is a poke hero, right? She doesn't do good damage up front. She doesn't have good burst healing. She doesn't like when people get in her face, so she by nature is a poke hero. Does that mean she synergizes with poke lineups? Well, Pylon is good for poke lineups because you typically are set up in the same spot, so Pylon gives you good value. Outburst can sort of be used to knock people away. That's like kind of adding value. I think the problem thing is like you add to the fragility of your lineup in poke without being able to defend yourself in the same way that somebody like Baptiste does. So, I can see where it's like in the middle, right? In terms of like definitely playable, but not necessarily super strong. Rush. Does Illari feel like a super good rush hero? Well, the problem with rushing is that you tend to run away from the pylon unless you can predict where the fight is going to be perfectly and put the pylon down in time. Your burst healing is excellent, right? Like pretty much best in game. So that can be very helpful in like a rushy situation, but your damage is not that good. So like I don't feel like that makes any sense. I feel like for Illari, like I sort of want to fight the dragon longer to give me more value to use, my what I call railgun, to poke people down and to use pylon to build charge. I think that your Captive Sun ultimate synergizes well with Rush because it tends to clump the opposing team to try to stay alive against Rush, and then you hit them with Captive Sun, and then you're in good shape. Yeah, I feel like for Illari, I would personally probably just put orange triangles for all three of them. Honestly, I think this one I think KROW, it would be great if KROW could explain because I don't 100% know what they're thinking in this situation. But for dive feels like the also I guess in the middle. So you are just good long range damage, which helps with your dive. Like your dive heroes go in, you help focus people down, right, with your railgun. Pylon is okay. It keeps you and the other support alive. It doesn't help the DPS and tank unless you chuck it way out there, which is pretty unlikely. Outburst can be used to save yourself. And then you can burst heal people when they like Winstons or Divas that are rotating back to you. You can burst heal them up again. So yeah, I think I would probably just put orange triangle all across the board for Illari versus saying that I feel one of them feels like a default for her.